That's our topic. And we are, of course, now going to ask you to mute yourselves. And the system that we use, in case you're new or you haven't been here before, is that we ask everybody to mute while we're talking, and then you're welcome to use the hand feature, which should be under reactions, wherever that is on your screen. And you can use the hand feature to put your hand up to make a comment or to ask a question, which we welcome. And if you can't find it, then you're welcome to use the blurt feature, which is just to unmute and try and get a word in edgewise, and we'll add it into the conversation, because that can work just as easily. So again, we're very glad that you're here today. And I want to start by talking about curiosity, because that was the first of the sessions. We talked about curiosity, and hopefully you've been able to download that handout. And so we have tied curiosity to the child, and recognizing that we all have an inherent ability to be curious that sometimes gets turned off or ramped down for lots of reasons, but that we can actually engage and cultivate that again. And that when we do cultivate curiosity, the next step, which is the next part, cornerstone, for lack of a better term, is clarity. And what I mean by clarity, what we've talked about where clarity is concerned, is that so many of us have not, for whatever reason, stopped or we're in the process of thinking about what our preferences are, how we want to spend our time, how we want to spend our resources. And when we talk about this, of course, it would be the elephant in the room if we didn't acknowledge, no matter how old you are or young here today, there are certain non-negotiable aspects of your life that you just have to do. And that takes up a lot of time for lots of us. And sometimes it takes up more time at one point in life than it takes up at another point in life. But the non-negotiable part is always there. So what we're really talking about when we talk about preferences is what we can do with the negotiable part of the time we have. Because as grown-ups, we ought to be able to choose how we're going to use that time, even if we just have a little of it. And the more I thought about clarity this time around, since I've written about it several times and talked about it several times, is that I realized that clarity is directly linked to the saboteur, for those of you who've studied archetypes with me. And if you haven't studied archetypes with us, we all have a saboteur. It's a universal part of the human condition. And there are ways that we sabotage ourselves and ways that other people sabotage us. And that when we can be clearer and attain some clarity around what those are, then we're in a better position to come to terms with it. So, would you like to add anything at this point? Because I don't want to make you talk.
No, I'm thinking about the exercise and how it is that we get from curiosity to clarity. So maybe we could go over that, because in my own experience, I feel like in the past when we've talked about this, which we've done some other live streams on the Cornerstones, I think we get curious about something or a variety of things, and we start experimenting and playing. And at least for me, I always felt like I should just experience some sort of spark, and that I fall in love with some activity, and I'm like, oh, that's my thing, and that's what I'm going to choose to spend my negotiable time doing. And I don't know if I've ever necessarily felt that. And so just now I'm at a point in my life where I'm experimenting and playing, but I'm realizing that I still have to get through some of those hard learning steps of being bad at something and still working my way through that.
Mm-hmm.
And choosing the activity, like drawing, for example, because there is a little bit of a love and passion there that I experience, but it's not like an initial spark, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we can go anywhere we want to go because we're grown-ups. So you want to talk about the alignment exercise? Is that the one you're thinking of? Okay, so this was outlined in the handout. And some of you are going to be very familiar with this already because I've talked about it a lot, but I don't think it ever hurts to revisit it. And I also don't think it's one of those things that you do and then it's done and you never have to do it again. I think it's sort of in a way you can use it as a check-in. And so what I always propose is that you make 3 lists. And the first list is the list of all the things you love to do. Like, can you name 5 things you love to do?
See, that's the thing. For me, I'm kind of just entering the visual art world, so to speak. I mean, I've been around it my whole life, being your daughter, but I don't know if there are specific things that I love to do.
Well, and your answer is exactly the perfect answer for this, which is why we never stage anything, because it doesn't have to be art stuff.
Yeah.
Do you love to hike?
There are so many things that I actually don't like to begin, but once I'm done with them, I have loved doing them.
I wonder if that's the saboteur somewhere.
I'm sure it is.
Anyhow,
I don't know.
My point is that when you love, the list of what you love to do isn't only the stuff that you love to do in a studio. Because if you're determining your preferences, if you love to be outdoors, that's a really important thing to notice, because then maybe botanical printing, even if you've never tried it, is going to be right up your alley because you just love being outdoors and engaging with nature.
Yeah.
And maybe if you love to bake, but you've never really, I mean, maybe where that's going to lead you is to baking things that are elaborate and creative. You know, I mean, I can tell you one thing that's not going to be on my list. I will never learn to love folding clothes.
Yeah.
Okay. I just would just if I lived alone, I'd throw them in a heap and be done with it.
Yeah.
Especially now that I hardly ever have to leave the house, so I can wear something wrinkled 3 days in a row. But I digress. But I think that's where we maybe limit what we love when we're thinking about this list. So let's finish talking about how the lists intersect, and then we'll circle back. So the second list that you make is the things you're really good at doing. Okay, I got to put you on the spot again. Name one thing you're really good at doing.
I am good at making systems work together.
You're really good at that.
And building systems and organizing things.
You're really good at that.
I'm figuring out how that comes into making art.
Okay, so do you like doing that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so when you like doing something and you're really good at it, then I consider that being in alignment.
Yeah.
So then the next step is to think, well, if I really like organizing systems, I bet you've got an engineer.
Maybe.
You might. Well, anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
But in any event, when you make a list of what, and it changes over time is the thing. That's why it's worth checking in with yourself maybe once a year, and this is general information. No, this isn't directed at you particularly, but I think it's important that we check in with this on a regular basis, because sometimes we're going along doing something that we've been doing a pretty long time, but we don't recognize that it's just not, we don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
We could be really good at it, but we just don't want to do it anymore. And when that happens, I was thinking about this concept of alignment. We think of alignment as being like the chiropractor. When your spine is aligned, you feel better and you're healthier and you stand taller. Well, when you're energetically aligned, it means that you're spending your time doing the things, your negotiable time at least, doing the things that you really want to do. And that means you're not in conflict with yourself.
Mm-hmm. When
you're out of alignment, in my opinion, that's when you're in conflict with yourself over something. And sometimes we have to come to terms with it. If I have an aging parent that I need to care for, and I need to be on the phone helping figure out her care, then I just have, that's just goes without saying. And when people have health crises in children and animals, that's all we choose to do that. We might not always enjoy it, but we put on our big girl pants and we handle it.
Yeah. I think I get lost in all of that when I have to separate out, like self-care has to come in at some point, like, because I can think about being a mother and taking care of my daughters. And that is something I am good at and I like to do most of it. And so I can kind of lose myself in that.
Well,
in giving and serving and taking care of other people,
yeah.
even though I do like to do it. I like serving people. I like helping other people heal. And that's something, but I have to take myself into account too. And so maybe that's just another column here that we need to add to the, does it serve me or someone else or both?
Right. And I think clarity about that is important too. I mean, clarity is a pretty big term here. And we're talking about the clarity of knowing when self-care is in order and when other care. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah. It's the whole conversation about, well, not negotiable time and saying no to things and start, because I think people are going to ask things of you constantly. Like more so in parenting situations or taking care of an elderly parent.
Well, even dealing with organizations,
volunteering,
like a fairly large component of the people who are here today have probably been in positions where they volunteered for organizations, and sometimes that started to take over and wasn't so satisfying anymore.
And so that's where the recalculating comes in.
Yeah,
because you can really be good at that type of service and really enjoy it, but also get totally burnt out.
Exactly. So it's about finding the balance.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the clarity is related to recognizing when we sabotage. This isn't always real easy to look at, but what the heck, it makes I think, as hard as it is to look at some of this, it's so worth it because it brings a certain amount of peace, inner peace, if you can be clear about how much volunteering is good for you and when volunteering starts to get the best of you. And how is that related to these aspects? I mean, we're talking about ways that we sabotage each other and we sabotage ourselves. And the need for control is one. And if we can recognize and we don't have to solve the thing that I think might also hang people up in these discussions is that just because we're talking about it now doesn't mean at the end of this hour it's all solved.
Yeah.
It's not going to be solved.
Right.
But we're going to have more clarity about it than we had at 2:00.
Yeah. Even sitting down to work through the worksheet and make your columns, and I don't think I could do that today and know exactly what my alignment would look like.
No.
And it's only looking back through patterns in my life and sets of years where I've kind of done different projects that I can use that information to really become more clear now. And I couldn't do that without having gone through all of the things that I went through.
Exactly.
So
you're in a really great place being your age, because the more awareness you have around this now, the more intentional you can be as you go along. And someone on my end of the age continuum can benefit from looking at where I am spending my time and making sure at this age I'm clear about how I'm spending my time and I understand the reasons why.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think I really even understood what, clarity meant for me personally until maybe the last year, because I've just had I'm in a very kind of tumultuous time in my life, and figuring out I'm trying to lean into discomfort more and really kind of experience my emotions fully and learn from them. And I've never done that before. I'm trying to be much more mindful about how I'm feeling, and not just turn to a quick fix like online shopping or TV or cookie dough, whatever it is.
Well, cookie dough's been around a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just, without consciously doing that, I feel like I'm going deeper and I'm able to kind of pick at this idea of alignment and clarity in a way I have never done before.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know. I think that's a positive thing.
Oh, it is. It's hot. It's not fun. It's like not comfortable.
No, I appreciate that. When you said leaning into what was hard, that would pretty much sum that up.
Right.
But, well, and you know what? We can't decide that it's good. I'm not going to regret that I did not have the clarity that I have now when I was your age. I didn't at all. But what's the point of regretting that? So no one who's sitting in on this today or watching it later after the fact should waste any energy regretting anything, because it doesn't serve a point. So we're just here to understand better about it.
Yeah.
And how to achieve it. So if we finish, and then we can open it up so people can join here in the conversation. So the third list that I propose is the stuff that you wish you could do better, or the stuff that you might want to learn to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know, now you're really making me wonder whether age has anything to do with that. You know, when I was 34, I probably had a lot of ideas of things that I wanted to try and things I wanted to do that now looking back, there's no way in hell I really wanted to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I thought I did. But I think one of the aspects of maturity that's a positive thing that we can embrace here is that maybe it's easier to start being clearer about what to drop off that list of things you thought you wanted to do. Because if you drop the things off the list of what you thought you wanted to do, then you've got this psychic space that opens up so that you can devote more to what you do want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's kind of where it's hard for me, because the perfectionist in me will try something and I'll be enjoying it, but I can quickly talk myself out of leaving it on my list of something I want to pursue because I wasn't good at it the first time, or I ran into something just difficult about it that I didn't want to, and deciphering that, is hard. I'm not really sure how to do that. Maybe just sitting and kind of holding it and figuring out if it's based in fear of perfectionism or not feeling good enough at it, or if it's truly something that's just not fun for you.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes you have to leave something alone for a while and then revisit it too.
Yeah.
Because I just think that's sort of how the ebb and flow of being creative. I think that's partly what it is. So, well, we've got some comments, so let's bring some other people into the discussion. Laura, I'm glad you're here today.
Yes, I am too. Thank you. I just wanted to say that for me, time is a huge issue. And I think that in a lot of ways, it's probably more challenging for you, Zena, and for people who are your age, because you're right in the middle of everything. I'm assuming that you're still working, whereas a lot of us here today are either winding down, or many of us are already retired, and our kids are, grown and launched and all that, and you've got little kids. And I've been retired for 3 years. I still have to remind myself to calm down, because when I start doing some things that I want to do in terms of growing as an artist, I get this crazy anxiety, like, I have to do this. I don't have time, and I've got to do this. And then I have to go. I do have time, and you don't probably. So I just wanted to mention that.
I have some time, but it's probably less, a little bit less.
I don't know whether there's ever enough time.
Yeah.
I just feel like a mad woman all the time, running around trying to do all the things I want to do, and then more come. And I think the more willing we are to embrace the creativity in a general sense, the truer that is. So, Marilyn, glad you're here.
I'm thinking of it in terms of these age differences. I'm at the end, and Zen is at the beginning. And if you look at the three, what I want to do, what I want to do more of, maybe, you know, when I was Zena's age, I wanted to do a lot. And then I got very, very busy, and there was still that desire, but then the time issue came in. Oh, at 50, I thought, I don't have a lot of time, and I could have been doing all this. So I did lots and lots and lots. Now, there's more intention with the third column. That what do I want to pay attention to? And for instance, portraits. But why do I want? There's more of a question about maybe why I want to do portraits. Where do I want to use them in the future? So there's a different spin on it and a mindset, I think, as you are in different phases of your life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think it's a really beautiful thing that we have such an age range in these discussions, as well as in CST, frankly, because I didn't see that coming, but I consider it a huge gift to be able to interact with so many women who are in so many different places in their lives. It's just an incredible blessing.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's so much we all have to offer each other. You know, we're not talking about community this week, we're talking about community next week. But the fact is that the community is one of the graces of what we have here that I never want to underestimate. And I know you feel that way too, Marilyn.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you.
Lucy.
Yeah, I think I have found that I love to learn. So that's on my first list. And I may be good at what, you know, the class, or I may be successful, or I may find pleasure in it. But then down the road, I'm just not doing it. And why? Well, maybe it's not that fulfilling, but I love to learn. I love to take classes. So, and then I thought of another question you could ask yourself, is if I unexpectedly got off work early, or somebody's babysitting the kids or whatever, and all of a sudden I have a free hour open that I didn't have anything planned for in my day. What could I do? What would I do? What would you pick?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, something you really love and really find enjoyable would creep to the top.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too that another thing that falls in this category, in this overall discussion, is the things that we keep thinking we'd like to do, but we're afraid to try them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes if you had that hour that you're describing, Lucy, I know, especially now that the studio's in the house here, I frequently have 35 or 40 minutes where I'm between responsibilities. And I find myself going out to the studio and thinking about something that I'm not sure will really work. And I think, well, what the heck, I've got 20 minutes. I'm just going to do a little and see if it will work. And for me, that's relatively different behavior, because I used to have to get in the car, drive over to the studio. And if I was going to do that, I needed to be there long enough to justify it. And so I think that's another aspect of how our lives change. And the other thing I want to be sure to say here, which I think is important from the standpoint of the alignment that we started the conversation with, is that just being in alignment doesn't necessarily mean that you're really good at something. It can also mean that you're okay with just being however you are with something, but you enjoy doing it. So I don't want to make alignment sound as though it's always about getting really good at doing something and liking being good at it and doing it, because it can just be, I'm not a fabulous cook. I'm an okay cook, but I really enjoy cooking. But I do my share of throwaways. And am I interested in taking cooking classes? No, not really. So I think that that's another way to think about being clear with yourself, which could eliminate that little voice we have that says, well, you're no good at this. And the answer to you're no good at this, or you don't want to do this anymore, could just as easily be, well, I'm okay with doing it the way I do it, or I'm okay with learning to do it, and now I don't have to do it again. Which I think in the
there's different levels of proficiency, and you can decide where you're going to set that threshold or that limit.
Exactly. And that's what clarity is, just knowing where that threshold is. That's a good way to describe it. Because then you're not in conflict over it. You're not always beating yourself up over it.
Yeah, and then maybe you don't compare yourself to other artists or other cooks or other mothers or whatever.
Yeah, I used to dress in things from the thrift store because I wasn't tall and thin, and I was never going to be considered one of the really nice looking girls, and I didn't have nice clothes, and I didn't have any money. So I just decided that I would be as different as I could possibly be so that nobody could ever compare me to anybody. That worked pretty well as a strategy. So we all have our ways. Sherry, we're glad
Yes. Okay, I've been retired for 10 years, and I've been, I worked part-time to travel for a few years, and now I'm not even doing that. So I don't know how I ever worked 8 hours a day. People say, what are you going to do when you retire? And I said, oh, I've got enough quilts in my head to keep me busy for 20 years. But the only things I could come up with that I wanted to do, since I've had 10 years to try something, and I agree with Ava that now I know I don't ever want to have to do that again. So I leave a lot of half-finished projects because I lose interest. But if I don't want to pursue it, then I'm not going to make myself do something I'm not enjoying. But the only two things I said I wanted to learn to do was learn how to speak French and watercolor. And I'm pursuing the watercolor, but I don't know about French. I may never learn French.
Yeah, well, good luck on that. Yeah, I have said this in a number of classes, so some people may have heard me say this, and I don't know, maybe it's a rough way to think about it. But as far as some of these uncompleted projects and unfulfilled this or that or the other, I just started thinking 10 years ago, if I died at the end of the week, is this how I want to have spent my last week? And if the answer was no, I do not want to spend the last week of my life doing this, then I would try and make some changes. And sometimes it takes that kind of harsh reality to help us figure certain things out. And it sounds like that's a harder version of what you're talking about, Sherry, but it's essentially the same thing. Thanks for Penny.
Yeah, I was just thinking about those three lists that you two talked about in the beginning. And I think that you had a version of that last year, as I recall, those lists in one of the exercises. And I could not do it. And this year, I'm not going to do it again. And I was thinking about why that is. And it's because back in 2014, I had a really serious head injury. And I was right at the point of launching this whole thing with textiles, and I had all the supplies and all the stuff. And the head injury was serious enough that I couldn't, I had no memory. I had no executive functioning. I just kind of existed for several years. And in the beginning of 2020, so that's a long time, I finally felt like, okay, I've got enough. I've learned enough about how to deal with this new brain, and I think I can start stuff again. And what happened was I realized, well, first of all, I have all that stuff that's backlogged from before 2014 that I thought I wanted to do. And one of the really weird effects of the head entry on me is I have absolutely no filter. So like I signed up for millions of online classes. I bought yards of fabric, dozens of dyes, all these things that somehow I thought I was going to do. I signed up for an online herbal course that just, I mean, I had no memory, so I couldn't do the quizzes. You know, it's like I had no discernment around that kind of stuff. And I still really struggle with that, weirdly enough, which was never an issue for me before the head injury. But at least now I have enough. I recognize, like, okay, wait, just like sit on this a couple days before you push that button or whatever, pull out your credit card. So for me, the clarity process is 100% not brainstorming what I want to do, what am I good at, so forth. It's going through all of this backlog of stuff and sorting through it and saying, yeah, do I really want to do this? Does this need to belong to somebody else? And it's a process where there's certain things I know right away. Yeah, that's done. I have no desire to go back to that. Some of it I say, not sure, but I'm going to give myself 3 months and come back to it. And one of the things that I am finishing, because it's really important to me, and it's very difficult for me. I have a PhD, but now I have a learning disability. So finishing that herbal class, they gave me an extension because they're really good at working with people who have challenges. And I'm finishing it, and it's just making me sweat bullets because of all the things that I never used to have to think about how to accomplish. But that is important, even if I never do anything with it, I need to finish that because that's part of my clearing the table and getting the clarity. And so it's a really interesting process for me that is just kind of the opposite of what maybe at different stages of life one does right now. It's like, what do I need to get rid of and what still resonates from all that stuff that looked pretty cool back in the hazy days of my head injury recovery. And I for a long time, I felt really frustrated with myself for not having had the judgment to say, no, I can't do that. But now it's like, I look at that with great affection because like, well, that in some unfiltered version of myself, there was this immense childlike spirit and creativity and wanting all the things, right? And so now it's just coming back with a slightly different brain and saying, all right, so now what? So, just wanted to add that.
Well, Penny, I think really what you've articulated here is the overreaching sort of thing that we have to keep in mind, which is that none of this is one size fits all. We all have to, that's one thing that hopefully just the discussion helps make each of us recognize where we are and what clarity looks like for us, because hers is not going to be mine and mine is not yours and yours is not Linda Dawson, et cetera, et cetera. And yet here we have a space where we can welcome everyone and give everybody a chance to figure it out, and it's all okay. It's like somebody said that the third, let me find that. The 3-year-old grandchild's favorite song is I'm Okay. And that's really what we're talking about. And figuring it out, what clarity is for each of us is just one more version of refusing to allow any of these things to sabotage us by saying all the time, I'm okay. I'm okay. I love that. Linda.
Have been interested in doing your list and have done the list several times when you brought them up. But I was just thinking about a fourth list. And for those of you who are garment sewers and probably quilters know Nancy Zeman, who had public television for such a long time. And she wrote a book called 10, 20, 30 Minutes to Sew. And what she did was sit down and do all her different techniques and figure, I can do this one in 10 minutes. But if I want to do this one, I have to have 20 minutes of time. So if I only got 10 minutes, here's a list of things I can do and accomplish during that 10-minute time frame. And, it's a proven list because it's my own timing of my own work. And I think that would be a great thing. I think I'm going to do that because I very frequently go out into the studio and think I'm going to do something. And by the time I get it all laid out and ready to go, my time's up. And now what do? I don't even have time to put the stuff all back away again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can I say something on that? Sometimes it helps. I do stitch meditation, and I create a pile that I can pull and have needles threaded because I have eye problems, and they're ready there to do when I do have a few minutes. And sometimes having those things prepared, the things you like to do, in a little pile or a little space, so that you can just go right to them, as Linda is suggesting. That's all I wanted to say.
It's a good idea, Marilyn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I think these two ideas could be combined because, in fact, we could each make a list of what we can do in 20 minutes, what we can do in 30 minutes, et cetera. But then we can also take a few minutes to get set up, sort of like you're laying the ground, just like when you get a supply list for an online class and you have to pull that all together before the class begins to save time once you get to the class. It's a little bit like that in a way. So these are great ideas. Judy. I think you're muted, Judy.
There I am. I am.
Oh,
This is really interesting.
Which Judy are you talking to?
sorry, I didn't see a Judy. I didn't realize you both had your hands up. Could Judy Weiss go first, Judy?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I just wanted to talk about the concept of clarity. For me, clarity has been realizing my limits. And when I was younger, and I think of you, Zena, I thought I could do everything. I was Superwoman. I did have 3 kids and I did want to do it all. So I buried myself in volunteer work. I didn't have any artistic background and didn't start that till I was 50. But now I'm well over 50 and I'm finding it still very hard to switch gears in all of those things. So my idea of clarity has been to come to the point where I can cope with family and grandchildren, and that's my number 1 priority. And then my number 2 and 3 are art and volunteer work. So I have a really hard time switching gears. If I get into the volunteer work, I can get involved in it. And then before I know it, it's 9 o'clock at night and I've done volunteer work all day and no art. And I can do the same with art where I zone out and I look up and 8 hours has gone by and I haven't even eaten. And the clarity for me is realizing I can't do it all. I can limit my activity, but even in the activities, I have to set boundaries. So setting time on my phone where I have a stop time as well as a start time. My start has become easier over the years because I can lay things out as people have talked in the studio. And I always leave things at a place where I can sit down and start. But the stopping point, because I'm a zone in person, has been a real difficulty. So clarity is knowing when to change tracks. It's knowing that I don't have the capacity that I used to have when I was 20, and really setting strong limits on what I'm going to sacrifice in one area to be able to accomplish another. Mm-hmm. So that's all I wanted to say. It's clarity takes different forms for different people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Judy. Judy Say Willis, please.
Hi, Jane and Zena. This has been really interesting to hear so many different perspectives coming at it. About the only thing I can offer is prioritizing or coming up with, a 3 list is tough to do because it's you can jump in and you can get so many things going and then you don't accomplish anything some days. What I found as we went into COVID and I thought, well, I'm going to get all this done, all those things I hadn't gotten done. What I ended up doing is saying, I'm going to do something for 15 minutes and then I'm going to switch it to something else and something else. And I found that I was getting more done in these 15-minute segments than I did when I was allocating, half a day to do things. And I still have a difficult time prioritizing and what is it I really want to get done. I like the idea that somebody posted that I believe she said her mother decided to take piano lessons at 80. I think I might go do that because I've always wanted to play the piano.
That's cute.
I use that strategy too, of trying to set aside just small chunks of time.
Yeah.
Much more productive that way also.
Well, maybe it's actually one of the things that's behind that succeeding is that you can focus really quickly because you've made this decision that this is what you're going to do. So you don't hem and haw getting into it. You just go.
Yeah. And taking the time because was it Marilyn? I think whoever mentioned that if I found myself having an hour, how would I choose to spend that time? And that's actually happened to me a couple of times, and I'm so flustered by having time that
Yeah.
in my office, and I see various art supplies, but they're not really set up, and I don't know what to choose. And so I have spent some time just leaving my watercolors out and just having access to those, and I can just walk away from them. They'll dry. It's fine. They're so easy to clean up, and so that's one point of clarity that I've definitely found in choosing tools in this time of my life is easy, as easy as possible. And that's really working for me. So
yeah. There's an aspect of this I wonder, I don't know, I'll just throw it out there, whether it's a little bit like limiting variables for some of us.
Yeah.
It's like I, at one point in my life, just decided to buy black clothes. I didn't have to think about what was going to go with what.
Yeah, that's why Steve Jobs wore the same black turtleneck every day to limit decisions.
Does that mean I'm just as smart as he is?
Yes, of course.
Anyhow, yeah.
When I can't find the hand, but can I fall in line to those that have their hands raised because I have a thought?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, for me, I get scared, and I've been ill most of my life, and then I'm scared. I mean, I just turned 59, right? And to me, I'm scared because many things I believe I will fail at, and I don't feel like I don't always, have a support group. And now I have this community. But I just wanted to say I'm scared. Thank you.
I feel that too.
Well, that's a really brave thing to admit, Ginger. And there are a lot of us who can completely understand that. And my personal feeling is that's why it's so important. I don't know about you, this is the general you, not just you, Ginger. I've had periods in my life where I was depressed, and you know what I did? I just disappeared. I didn't reach out to other people who would have been very willing to love me and help me. And it took me a long time to get past feeling embarrassed or less than or unworthy because I had bouts of depression. And I think that that's one of the things, I know this is true for both of us, one of the most important things about these conversations and also the creative strength training is that we have opportunities there to be in community with each other and admit that we're scared in a safe environment where you're not going to be judged for being scared. If anything, other people who have that same sort of reaction that you're describing are going to symbolically throw their arms around you right now and say, it's okay, we're all here together. And I find that extremely powerful. And I have to admit, I never anticipated that that would be possible with social media. And yet we're living proof that it can be, as long as we're willing to be brave enough to share ourselves in the ways that we do in these get-togethers that we have, which is why we do them. So stick with us, Ginger. We're here for you.
Thank you.
Barbara.
Yes.
I don't know whether I'm bringing the saboteur back into this somehow, but if I have a gift of time, I don't know what in the hell to do with it. I end up staring out a window or something rather than settling down and doing something. I don't know, and I don't want to keep bringing up age if I am the oldest person in this group. But I'm being confronted right now with, I don't have that much time left and I still can't make up my mind what I want to do. What in the hell is the matter with me? I think a support group is very necessary. I show my stuff to my kids and they make faces. I show it to my friends and their comments are, gee, you have a lot of patience. I mean, not it's pretty, it's ugly, it's whatever, gee, you stitched all that together, and it's, I just get to the point, and I do, and I do want to add to the discussion of have your stuff out and ready to go when the mood strikes, because I'm into this, 1-bedroom apartment, and there's part of me that everything has to be neat. And so if your stuff, and I've read this someplace, if your stuff is always available to go at it, you'll get so much more done than, oh, gee, I have to put the sewing machine up again. Oh, well, I should defrost the refrigerator first, kind of thing. So I get to the point of just, I do go back to the list, though, in saying, when I look at certain things, even when I iron, I love to iron. People think I'm a nut job for doing, saying that. I love to iron. And I'm happy. I think you do something sometime and you just go, gee, I'm happy right now. Why? And I think that must feed into the clarity a little bit. And I love your shirt. I can see it all coming together. So that's all I have to say.
I'll send you some ironing.
I don't enjoy like getting all my summer clothes out at once and I have to iron straight for 3 days. But taking a wrinkled piece of fabric and you make it look nice, to me, is such a sense of accomplishment. But everybody goes, you really are a little, over the edge thinking that,
I think you should just join the club, Barbara, because I love ironing fabric and making it look really nice. That's one of the best parts of dyeing fabric, is what you get to do when you're ironing it at the end. It's transformative. And if you stick with us, and I know you are, we're going to work on some of these things over the course of the next year. And you are with other people who are equally as, I'm never going to make a shirt and sell it to people that says, join the nut job club, but that's basically what we've got going here. Sometimes when people are on the outside looking in. Judy. Okay.
There we go. Okay, sorry. My iPad was not working correctly. Yeah, for me, clarity, I think that's a title that should have been placed on a lot of things that have happened to me throughout life. And I see it happening in transitions. And I've had an awful lot of transitions in my life. And the biggest one was, for almost 30 years, I was selling women's wearables and doing craft shows and all kinds of things. And I loved doing that. I loved that process until I didn't. and then it really raised a lot of questions for me because it was who I was. And it was how I built my life. And so that sort of fostered a lot of decisions, a lot of thought process. And in terms of the clarity, I was thinking of you, Senna. I mean, I began to realize that this kind of thing was happening to me all my life. And that for me now, as I look back on it and as I hear you talk too, I look and I think for me, one of the biggest transitions was to say, I am not going to sell clothes anymore. I am not going to weave clothes anymore. I've enjoyed it. I'm good at color. That was my primary thing. Art was the way I work with color. It was different than what other people did. I saw colors differently. And I thought, what am I going to do now? Once I made that decision, I was clear about that. It was like, what's next? So for me right now, a lot of other things happened, but in the art world, for me, the enjoyment of making that decision was it really freed up so much time that I could then do just what I wanted to do and not what I had to do to sell something. And so I see transitionings as steps, and that within those steps, there are tiny moments of clarity, and those are important because they lead to the next moment of clarity. And so this is really helpful because I am in that stage now, and having moved to a whole new area of the country. Lots of transitions are happening, but the one constant is I'm beginning to explore what I want to say. There was my, this is sort of the hidden art side of me, that part of my brain now is become alive. And so that's exciting. And so I'm taking and exploring lots of different things. And that's clear that I'm enjoying that. And I like that. But what is unclear is what that's going to lead to. And so that's another thought there is like, well, gee, I hope I'm not wasting all my time doing this. What is it? Where is this going? What is it leading to? So transition and transitions, a lot of stuff happens in small increments that becomes clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think you're absolutely right about that.
That's really big. Looking back, I can now see so many small experiences I had that have led to bigger transitions or changes in my life for the good. So now I try and pay attention to them more because I'm just, what are you telling me? How are these small things going to come together for in the next transition?
And I think on some level, there's trust involved too.
Yeah.
We have to trust that this is leading somewhere, even when we don't know where it is. We're kind of going to run up against the clock here, but I would like to take the comments that are left. So Cindy, please.
This has just really been fascinating to listen to because I've been going through this struggle of one, realizing my time is going on. I'm turning to 65 and it's just hitting me, oh my God, it's all that's behind me that I had, and what do I got left? And I moved and I got rid of a whole bunch of stuff, moved several states away from where I was. I got rid of all my volunteering and stuff. And I found myself right now, I don't know how to manage the time. Not that I don't have the time, I have too much. I no longer have, I worked a life for 34 years at Caterpillar where I had deadlines, I had things to get done, I had other people to depend on me. And I'm at the point now, I got none of that because I don't even have my volunteer. And so I'm finding myself wasting away things and not getting up and going in. And so maybe this clarity thing will help me set some, let's do this instead of just sitting and watching TV because I don't want to get up and figure out whatever else I want to do.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So this has been really helpful today. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think, yeah, there's plenty more where this came from, and I think it's helpful. That's why we do it. Joyce.
Hi. This is really for, well, a lot of people, but Ginger brought it to my mind. I used to be afraid to do things too because I was afraid of not being good at it. And I found this delightful book back in 2007 called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It's by Susan Jeffers. It's not a very big book, but I still have my copy because every once in a while I have to go back and remind myself of something. But I just wanted to throw that out to the group because you have to feel the fear and just do it anyway. What's the worst that could happen? That you're not good at it, and that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me many years to figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I don't think we're really living in a society that supports doing things less than perfectly and having it be okay.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the thing, so what? We're not all going to be great at everything.
Yep.
And there's so many things, I was thinking about this when I wrote the last essay on confidence, which is a couple weeks out yet, but, think how much you are limiting yourself when you keep letting things drift away because you're no good at them. What a sad state of affairs that is, that there are so many things that we could enjoy doing, but we don't do them because we're not good at them because of other people's opinions that have infiltrated our brains. That's just you're not being fair to yourself.
And what a joy it is too when you finally get up the nerve to do something that you've always been afraid of. Like I'm trying to learn to draw faces, not portraits, but just faces. And I step back every once in a while and go, oh, look what I did. I can do this. And my husband looks at me and he goes, well, was there any doubt? And I said, well, yeah, there was a lot of doubt. But that's all I have wanted to say. Thanks.
Thanks. We're glad you're here. Do you need to take off?
Just a few minutes.
Okay. Ronnie, thanks for being here.
Hi, everybody. Most of what I was going to say has actually been covered by Joyce and by yourself, Jane, but the maxim I tried to do with my children when they were growing up was to be kind and have courage. And that was something I had on my wall for them. And I think that reflects back onto yourself. So it's having kindness to yourself as well, allowing yourself to make the mistakes. You're not going to be perfect the first time, or maybe not the 21st time, but having that fear shouldn't be stopping you from trying, because it's only by trying something and keep going at it that you actually find out, is it what you want? And it may not be what you want, but after a while, that'll start to become clear to yourself. But I think allowing yourself to have that experience, realizing that it may not be perfect, is a really important part of it all, whether it's your visual work or whether it's something else. So that was all I was going to say.
Well, we're glad you're here because I know the time zone is a challenge.
Yeah, not too bad today.
Linda, and then Esther, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, I want to address the fear thing because I was about Ginger's age when I expressed fear that I might lose my husband, fear that I would lose my family, fear that I would lose the use of my hands, that I wouldn't have my eyes, that I wouldn't wake up one morning. And then one day it just dawned on me, I control that fear. That fear does not control me. The reason I fear those things is because I allow myself to fear them. And I started thinking to myself, no, I'm not going to let you control my life any longer. And yes, those things can still happen, but they're things I can't do anything about anyway. And so I've just turned my attitude about fear around, and now I'm 85 and I still have some of those fears, but there's nothing I can do about them when they happen, if they happen. And they may never happen. They probably won't, because most of the things we fear don't really happen to us.
Thanks, Linda. Thank you. Esther.
There we go. Hello. I'm going to wrap this up with the opposite theme, I think, in that I think everybody should be okay with just sitting still and doing nothing. And maybe that you should put on the list, that if you have 10 minutes to just sit still and just be. We don't always have to be doing. And in that being, sometimes will come the clarity about what you really want to do next. That's it. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect. Wrap up.
Perfect. Yeah. Great. Thanks, Esther, for speaking up. That was exactly the right timing, which is how things always happen anyway, the way they're meant to happen. So, well, this has been a delightful conversation, and I hope you have all enjoyed it. Thank you for being here and spending this time with us today. And it will be recorded and it'll be available, and we'll send you the link. And I hope to see as many as possible of you tomorrow at the 2-hour workshop that I'm going to do, which is going to be great fun. And then next Friday, we have another in this series, and then another in the series, and then a workshop that's going to be incredible on symbolism. I just can't even stay in my chair. I'm having so much fun with that one. So I think we're getting the year off to a good start. And I am going to sit for 20 or 30 minutes and do nothing right now. So that I can collect my thoughts and appreciate all of you. Thanks for everything Zen is doing, and we're sending you guys lots of love.
I'm going to fold laundry.
Love you.